Hi everyone, it's Nichol Spohr. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be creating this fun, spooky Scarecrow A7 sized card using brand new coordinating dies for some of our favorite Tim Holtz stamp sets. I'm going to start with my background here, and I have an A7 sized rectangle die cut from Spellbinder's Windy cardstock. And we're going to start by building our kind of beautiful fall spooky Halloween background. I'm adding some speckled eggshell ink right over the top of my arch die. And we're just building up our color. We're going to add quite a bit more moodiness to this, but I often like to start with a colored cardstock and then apply those distress oxide or distress inks over that. I will be stamping the moon from the Scarecrow stamp set. So we're really focusing on the coordinating dies for the Scarecrow stamp set today. And the moon is going to go in that area. So I went ahead and added some fossilized amber in a circular motion in the upper right of this scene. Then I'm taking Uncharted Mariner and I am applying this over the top, blending it into and around that fossilized amber. We can mute it quite a bit. I want a seamless blend here more than a bright yellow moon. Then to create that moody feel that I love for my fall cards, I'm going to take black soot around the edge and blend that into the Uncharted Mariner and all of that, giving us this beautiful, moody, domed arch style background. I did decide to do a 5x7 card today to give my card much more real estate to really build my scene, but you could replicate much of this in an A2 size if you prefer. Okay, so now that I have looked at this, I am going to take my Uncharted Mariner, and I have a background grungy text stamp from Tim Holtz's Reflections set. Now, this is not going to completely cover a 5x7, so I am taking it and piecing it together. It doesn't matter if it's super perfect. I know you might be looking at it thinking, girl, what are you doing? I promise it's going to work out. I just want this hint of grungy text. And right now, when you first apply the ink, it is pretty in your face. It is pretty bold. And I don't want it to be this bold. And we can easily mute this. But I want to go all over with my text and get this covered up. Then I'm going to go back with my blending brush. And you'll notice I'm going around all of the edges, smoothing that out, and really muting it. As it dries, it is going to mute a little bit more, but especially around those outer edges, it's completely faded out. Then we're going to take water, and I am going to take a large paintbrush, and I am going to splatter this all over the front of my panel and then dab up that water, of course, with oxides or distress ink. That is then going to oxidize and give us those faded splotches and spots, which is exactly what I want for my background. Oh, that looks amazing. I love it. Then I'm going to stamp the moon from the Scarecrow stamp set with black ink. I'm also going to stamp these bats. I love these bats. You are going to find so many uses for these bats in your Halloween and fall creations. I've stamped them a couple of times using a black ink. I'm using the black dye ink from Simon Says Stamp to do my stamping. And then we're going to take our favorite distress crayons and add color to the moon. I decided there is a coordinating die for the moon. However, I wanted my bats and my moon to be more in the background and have my Scarecrow and stalks of corn, like from our corn maze or whatever, to be more in the foreground of the card. So I opted not to use the coordinating dies for either of these images, but you do have that option now because this set does have coordinating dies for both of them. And the bats really do die cut really close to the bat images. It's a really, really good die. So Lots of options for that. Now, I did take a little bit of water and smooth out my coloring, at least a little bit. Felt like it was a little bit splotchy, and so I definitely wanted to go over that. But see how the fossilized amber in the background gives you that faint glow around the moon? Definitely what I was looking for with this card. Okay, now that we have our background pretty much designed, I did cut about a 1-inch strip from some, I think this was the avocado, Concord and 9th cardstock, and I'm adding a little bit of forest moss and black soot to this strip. I did use the same A7 arch die to die cut this, but I only cut about 1 inch of the cardstock to use kind of as the base for my design here. Next, I'm going to take my 2 corn stalks and my Scarecrow and stamp these on some Nina Desert Storm craft cardstock. And we are going to color these images in with distress crayons. I really love coloring with distress crayons, especially Tim's images. I feel like I can color really quickly with them. You can build up the color and it just gives you a perfect look. So I'm going to start with my pumpkin head Scarecrow here. I kind of did like a yellowish color to start. Blended in a little orange. You can blend in a little bit of brown to give some moodiness. You'll notice that as I'm coloring, when I get kind of where I like my shading, I will often go back with a black soot or a ground espresso or gathered twigs, something dark, and add some shading on top if I want it to be a little bit more moody, a little bit darker. The coat, for example, ended up way darker than what I actually wanted it. So have fun, blend those colors until you get the look that you want. I definitely started out with my Scarecrow image because he's so much fun to color. Doing all the great little grass down here, I definitely tried to match that to the color of cardstock I'm using along the bottom edge of my arch-shaped card. You will notice our arch-shaped card, I did try to make it somewhat resemble a snow globe / cloche. With that arch design. I'm a huge fan of snow globes, cloches, all of the things. And so I do a lot of card designs in that style because I think it's really simple, but it's really effective. I love that little bit of domed shape up at the top. Now, the little pants I did for the Scarecrow in the blue look amazing. I think I used prize ribbon for that, if I'm not mistaken. However, they needed darkening up a little bit, so that's where my black soot comes in. I'm also going to use the same color for the Scarecrow's witch hat, or hat. It looks to me like a witch hat a little bit, or a sorcerer hat, whatever. And so I'm going to just blend in those colors up there and darken it up. I love the crow sitting on top of the head. No coloring required for that. I decided to do some bold red orange for the coat. This, though, is where I feel like it got a little too bright and not quite as grungy as what I had hoped. But never fear, no starting over. We're simply going to go over this with some browns until we get the look we want. So I actually decided to just roll with it and knew that I could definitely darken this up with a little additional coloring on top, because ultimately this was the shade I wanted. I wanted this bright orangey red, but I don't want it to be bright. That doesn't even really make sense. We want it grunged up. So here I'm going in with my little black soot, going over some of those darker areas, and then we can blend out over the top of that. But this worked out perfectly. I love it. So just kind of coloring over the top with a little bit lighter hand. You could go in with a water brush pen and blend this out even easier if you wanted to. And now here's my brown. And see how that just darkens it up to this more burnt orange type of look. I love it. We're going to do some browns for the little shirt underneath here, since we've got our little yellow orange pumpkin head, the orange coat, the blue pants. But I like that little neutral colored shirt. Put a little red over the top of it. just a bit, and then of course a little black to deepen and darken it. Oh, looks so good. Okay, then for our corn stalks, we are going to go in with some oranges, pardon me, some yellows and some browns. I'm going to start with some yellows here, probably a little fossilized amber. And then if you need to, I think a little gathered twigs over the top works really well, or any of the other brown shades. Really quick coloring for this. And then the coordinating dies for this set are the brand new product from Simon Says Stamp. And they cut nice and tight and close. They are fantastic. You know, Tim's stamps have so much detail to them. You want your dies to cut nice and close. You don't want a super wide border all the way around. And I'm going to cut all these out, and then we can assemble our card perfectly. So there are my little dies all cut. I'm going to pop up the bottom portion of the card with foam adhesive, and we also are going to pop up the Scarecrow and no, just the Scarecrow. I was going to say the corn stalks, but no. We're just going to pop up the Scarecrow. I've also taken 2 of the A7 dies, one the size that we just used, and one a couple size smaller, and I've used some gold mirror cardstock from Simon Says Stamp to cut those out. Now, I made a little boo-boo here. I used 2 of the thin foam adhesive strips around the edge. They're too wide for my frame, so I did have to carefully peel those off. Full disclosure, I did use a little undo adhesive remover so that I did not ruin that background. One of the thin foam adhesive strips around the edge, and then I simply glued or adhered down my gold frame and put a little liquid down at the bottom. I did have it go over that bottom area. I kind of liked it a little bit better, but you could put that little bottom piece if you wanted to over the top of that bottom section. It would look a little bit more maybe like a snow globe. I kind of felt like this was like the cloche where it went all the way over the top. Okay, next we are going to adhere our Scarecrow with foam adhesive, but then the corn stalks with liquid adhesive, one on either side, and I'm going to kind of try to manipulate it so maybe part of it overlaps the Scarecrow on each side. You still get to see the bats off in the distance, the moon back behind. We have that great distressed blue, beautiful background. Look at the faint little bit of text over the top. You guys know how much I love that. We're going to take another piece of black cardstock, and we are going to prep it with our powder tool and stamp 2 of the phrases from our Scarecrow stamp on here. I used By the Light of the Moon and Something Wicked This Way Comes. And we're going to simply emboss with white embossing powder and use the 2 new coordinating dies to cut these phrases out. One is going to go up at the top of the card. The other one is going to go down near the bottom of the card. And I did see how I didn't quite get Something Wicked stamped all the way. I will have to redo this. I ended up not noticing it when I was heat embossing, and then as I was getting ready to die cut, I was like, hey, wait a minute, that isn't quite right. Okay, once I have die cut these sentiments with the coordinating dies, I am going to pop both of them up with a little foam adhesive, figuring out my placement. I kind of think that has the left. I think it looks better. Shift it over to the left. Shift it over, Nichol. There we go. Okay, and so there's our sentiments. Now, I did kind of mask off with some of my paper I used. I did not all the way, but it masks off a lot of the mirror cardstock. We're taking some white splatter, and I'm going to be pretty generous with this over our background. I wish I would have done this before I added the gold mirror frame, but you can mask it off a little bit. I did wipe off anything that got on the frame right away. And there's our great little white splatter. It will fade quite a bit, but I love that little extra distress around the edges. So here I'm just wiping that up. There we go. I am then going to create a card base by die cutting 2 more of these A7 arches. And we are going to glue one to the other. I did score it just maybe, I don't know, a ½ inch from the top. And we're going to glue these back to back, just like so. I then glued my frame to the front panel, and there is our shaped card. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. The supplies I used are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube.